Hello, everyone. Hi, it's Dr. Tamara Beckford, and welcome to the Dr. Tamara Beckford Show. Alrighty, so today we are about to do. That's right. It is going to be so much fun. So we have a doc here who is so amazing that they call her Jill of all trades, and you're gonna get to see why. So we're talking about when you have such and you're multi-passionate, like how you get to be successful even while being multi-passionate. We're talking about managing your dreams and taking flight. How are we doing this? We're talking to a physician who is not only doing medicine, but she's also a pilot. I know. She's an entrepreneur. She has all these skills. So when you're multi-passionate, how do you get success with all of that? Have no fear. I have somebody here to help you. Okay, so this doc, she's a graduate of Des Moines University College of Osteopathic Medicine. She did her residency in family medicine at University of Wisconsin Baraboo in the rural training track in family med, right? She's the CEO of Flight Time Medical, where she provides aviation medical services to all our pilots out there. So stay tuned for that. We're going to dive into that portion. Not even no, she's also a hospitalist and she serves as the host of On Call with the Prairie Doc, which is a public TV program dedicated to improving medical literacy. She's also been featured on the CBS affiliate show Kilo Land Living for her popular Jack of all trades. No, Jack is the dude, but Jill is who we're talking about. Jill of all trades show. We're talking about the one and only Dr. Jill Kruse. Dr. Jill, welcome, welcome. Thank you
Yes.
for flying in and stopping.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun show.
Absolutely. I'm really excited about this. There's so much that you can do. I didn't want to give it all away in the beginning because I'm like, no, she's just really that good. But before we got there to all these multi passionate portions, let's talk about your love and your passion for medicine. When did that erupt? In
For as long as I can remember, when I was a little girl, my
okay.
best friend across the street, Rachel Begeman, her
So,
mom was an OB nurse. So we would play hospital all the time. And she wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be the doctor. Her
mhm,
little brother was stuck being our patient.
the OB patient.
But we used my brother's weightlifting table as a surgical table, and everyone got their tonsils
Nice.
out and their appendix out because those were the only two surgeries we knew.
Yes.
And we
Love
would
it.
take little pencils and we would tape them to the back of the hand for IVs. We were trying to be really accurate.
So you guys were like having a real hospital.
Oh yeah, we had overhead paging. It was spot
I,
on.
but I love it. You open pages.
Mhm.
Oh, I love it. So we have IVs, and I love the ingenuity of it, right?
Yes.
Because when you think about the weight lifting table, it is. It's just a narrow version
Yeah.
of our table.
Mhm.
And at that age, when you're a kid, yeah, you can fit on it. And it's just like a surgical table. Oh my. I
Yeah.
love it. All right. So all the ingenuity when you were a kid and then the passion, were there any point in time when the passion left and came back, or it was like, no?
Full steam ahead, everything pointed towards, and
Oh,
I wanted to do all these other things as well, but it was primarily focused on getting into medical school and becoming a doctor. Yeah.
so now when you got into med school, no longer had to use the pencils. So now you can really do the real IVs and you're there. But there's so many different specialties, but you chose family med and then also in the rural track. So tell us
Mhm.
one, what made you decide to do family medicine of all? And then two, what made you decide to really do the rural track of family medicine, which really encompasses a lot in the training process?
When I initially went into medical school, I was diehard. I was going to be a surgeon. Actually, I was an officer in our surgical club. I
Mhm.
was
But
logging
you know
extra
what?
hours in
You
the
were doing
lab.
surgery since a kid.
Yeah,
Remember?
exactly. It made sense. And then on my second surgical rotation, I ended up with severe bilateral carpal tunnel. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, as a med student, how am I going to make it through residency and a career without ruining my hands? I
Yeah.
had the EMG and they were talking about needing to do surgery. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I got classes to get to. I got rotations. Yeah. Treated with splints and medications and just push through like you do as students. And then I found out that every other rotation I went in, I totally was enamored with it. I loved it. I loved dermatology. I loved cardiology. I loved infectious disease. I loved everything.
Mhm.
And when I got to family medicine, I'm like, oh, they do everything. Every day was different, and I got to do a little bit of dermatology, and I got to do a little bit of cardiology, and I got to do a little bit of GI and psych and all the things that I loved. And I can do punch biopsies, and I can remove a mole. There's your surgery. It made sense that it combined everything I loved.
Oh, I love it. Alrighty. So now we're there in family medicine
Mhm.
in your rotations, and you're like, bet, love it. But then moving on to residency and doing the rural track. So, what made you do the rural track versus what we consider the standard? And for those who are listening, who are like, what's the rural track of family med versus the regular family med track? Just give us an idea of what that entails.
Yep. So, rural family medicine is basically training you to deal with a medical practice where you don't have all the specialists down the hall from you.
Yeah.
Where I did my training in Baraboo, Wisconsin, it's about an hour away from Madison, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
And that residency, I think I got the best of all worlds because I got to spend months in the community hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. I got to go at the big University of Wisconsin hospital. And then I got to be in the community hospital in Baraboo in a town
Mhm.
of it's about 20, 25,000, probably more now, right next to the Wisconsin Dells. So we had a super busy ER from all the tourists that were coming and doing crazy things on the water slides and getting injured. It was a wonderful experience where I had all of this. Plus, it's the hometown of the Ringling Brothers, and they have a circus there,
Ooh.
as well as a circus museum. So we were also dealing with tiger bites and
Oh, well, that's a little bit different. Okay, I'm him, and I've never dealt with I go back.
we had the snake charmer where the constrictor constricted him a little too tight. And I had acrobats with rotator cuff injuries. And I had a contortionist with a back pain. I was like, stop doing.
I don't know,
I
just
don't
the
know what to tell
occupational
you.
hazard.
Yeah. So it
Oh,
was a very
man.
unique environment.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, that is when your job entails doing these things and you're like, okay, but now I'm still like blown away by the tiger bite. Snake
Yeah.
charmer, where the snake
Mhm.
was in a little too in love with the snake
Yeah.
charmer.
It was a
The
little,
grip was a little
yeah.
too tight. Oh man. Wow. Okay. So that is definitely a unique experience in
Mhm.
training. And that's the thing about
Yeah.
it. That's your training. So now how to handle all of these things.
Yeah.
We could drop you anywhere and you're like, oh, that's like when another thing happened. Interesting. All right. So now you're in and you're done with residency. What was your next step after that?
My
What
next step after that is basically I returned as close to home as I could get. I'm originally from Inwood, Iowa. It's a town of 800 people. So that's rural is what I grew up with. It's what I know.
right.
It felt comfortable. I did all the big city rotations during med school, and I went to Detroit, I went to Wichita, I went to St. Louis, and I was like, yeah, rural's not so bad. I really don't miss being on the farm.
Right.
So went back to a town of 1,200 people. It was one other doc and myself and a PA, and we ran the hospital. And so we were seeing clinic, we were inpatient. If someone came into the ER at 2 o'clock in the morning, they'd call me up and I'd get out of bed, come in, see the
Wow.
patient, and wait for the radiologist or the x ray tech to drive in and do our
Yes.
thing, and then go home and then go to clinic the next day.
Oh my.
Yeah.
No, so
So,
then so when people are like watching TV and they're always like, "Oh, back in the days," you're like, "No, that was just
oh,
me."
mhm,
like doing it. So rural medicine, we can see how having that training to be able to encompass and to take care of anything that comes in, how important it is. And then how important it is to feel comfortable and how important it is as being part of your community because you were the doctor
mhm,
in the community for the regular train day-to-day things and for the emergent things that might
mhm.
happen during the night. All right. So you're doing all this and then you start flying planes. Okay, how did that happen?
I read voraciously as a kid. My mom was an English teacher, so I had tons of books, and it started with this book.
Oh, I want to be a pilot.
Yep, and it's from 1952, so it's very
Oh, wow.
old, But I looked at this, I'm like, "Oh, to make the plane go up, you do this. To make it go down, you do that. That can't be that hard. I would love to do that. I think that looks like lots of fun." And then I was like, "Oh, his big brother gets to become this airline pilot." And I was like, "That who doesn't wanna be that?
Oh, yeah,
That
love
looks
it.
amazing."
Of course.
So I always wanted to be a pilot. When I was at a hospital Christmas party, we went to the next largest hospital, about 30 miles away, for their Christmas party that was affiliated with our hospital and clinic. I was talking with one of the doctors, and she said, "My husband's a flight instructor." I was like, "Oh," and I casually mentioned, "I always wanted to learn how to fly. I think that would be neat." And he said, "How about Monday at 7 o'clock?" And I was like, "Let me check my calendar." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not on call that day. Sure, meet you at the airport, 7 o'clock." And that's how it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first time, so now you've had this book since you were a child, and
Hmm.
then just a random conversation. And if it's a Christmas party, it's more than likely was Friday. And
Yeah.
then by Monday morning,
Hmm.
you're like, now I'm here at the airport learning how to fly. That first
Yeah.
time up, not being in the passenger part, but really being in the cockpit. What was that experience like?
Magic. It's still magic. Because we're lined up on the end of the runway, and he's okay if you're going to take off. I'm like,
Huh? Oh,
I thought
wow.
I was supposed
This
to
is
watch
this
the
is a
first one.
B1 do one.
Yeah.
B1 do one to the next
It wasn't
level.
even see one, do one, teach one. It was
Do one.
So he's, yeah, just pull the throttle back here. When it gets to above 60, just pull back on the yoke and we'll take off. Easy. I'll take care of the rudders. It was like, oh, okay. So, yeah. And that moment where the tires lift off and
Yeah.
you realize that you're flying, it's still magical for me. And I don't know how many takeoffs and landings. I'd have to look at my logbook. Hundreds. And I'm still, that moment is still magic.
Wow. It's just like this light. You just start feeling
Hmm.
light as an air.
Yeah. You have to leave your phone off. So
Yeah.
I have to, and I'm focused on flying the plane. I can't be distracted. So any problems I have, stay on the ground.
I can see now because it's not really an escape, but it's a zoning in. So when we talk about mindfulness, this is true
Oh,
mindfulness. You have to mind the plane. You're
mhm.
present. You're there. You're not focused on, oh my gosh, I forgot to finish this chart. It's just you're literally just there being present in the
Yeah.
plane, the experience, keeping your mind focused on what's going on at that time.
You are totally present in that exact moment. And you can't be thinking about something else or doing something else because the plane's going to do what it wants to do and you need to be in charge of the plane.
Yes, yes. Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So, got that experience, and then, what color you got bit by the bug. So,
Mhm.
the bug was it was buzzing around, but you got bit that day, and then full blown got all the hours and
Mhm.
training, and then became a pilot. But then here's the thing, there's some other things that you're great at, but being
Yeah.
a pilot, you decided, "I'm gonna use my skill as a physician
Oh,
to also help the pilots out." So tell us about that. Flight Time Medical. No, did I lose you?
oh, no. There we go.
Oh, here we go.
Not sure what
Yeah.
happened with the.
Tell us about Flight Time
Yep, I'm
Medical,
here.
your skills as
Yeah.
a physician and also as a pilot together. Were you
Mhm.
able to capture
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
after I did my flight training, yep, after I finished my flight training, the doc that I was replacing at the clinic who was retiring, he was an aviation medical examiner and a pilot himself. And he said when he retired, all of his pilots said, "Who are we going to go to for our flight physicals?" Because FAA requires all pilots to have a physical done by a designated FAA medical examiner. So they're like, "Well, it makes sense. You're a pilot to take over this practice." So I went down to Oklahoma City to FAA headquarters. I went through a week-long seminar to learn how to be an AME, and now 13 years later, I've opened my own clinic now to strictly do these flight physicals for pilots, and we call it Flight Time Medical. And actually just opened this December. Right now, I'm working out of my camper because the building that's being built is not finished yet. And
Right.
like every building project, we're over budget and late, running late. So FAA granted me special permission to have this little clinic, a one room clinic in my camper parked next to the building as it's being built. And so it's a very unusual situation right now for my pilots and me, but the clinic's getting closer every day. They just got cabinets installed and we've got the flooring. So we've got some trim work to do and a little bit more plumbing. And then I think we'll be ready to officially move in.
I love it. But guess what? The knowledge is within you.
Hmm.
So the camper is now just a temporary space, but they're still able to get their physicals while the building, and they can see it, right? They can see the building from, well, you see where we're headed.
Yeah,
And
and it was important to get this going because where I live is the home of South Dakota State University, and they have an aviation program. So they've got 100 kids every year that need a new physical. So they've got about I think 200, 300 in their program. So they were chomping on the bit, knocking down my door, saying, "When will you be open again?" Because I had to close for a while we were starting all of this building, and because I had previously been working at another clinic that was owned by a large health system, and I decided to go off on my own and make my own clinic.
I love it, love it. So it's almost there, almost there.
Almost.
And I know, what is the academic year for the aviation school
Oh,
similar in that, like, it's
yes.
May, we're
Hmm.
graduating? Okay, so we're almost there. We're almost
Yep.
there. So for the graduating class, yes,
Hmm.
the building should be open by then, hopefully, with all things working well, that you'll be able to
Yeah.
come and get your physicals as you head on out.
Mhm.
Alrighty. So, in addition to being like this pilot who's now also being able to provide this wonderful service for those, the aviators who need their physical, you are also skilled at historical sewing.
I've been involved in theater since I was about 10 years old. In
Mhm.
college, I was actually on theater scholarship and I was props mistress at my college's theater. I've been doing, actually got back into community theater when I was in residency. I was in Sound of Music for my first show back. And then since I moved here to Brookings for the last 12 years, I've been doing theater. I was actually Princess Fiona in Shrek. I was Tanya in Mamma Mia. I was Violet Moostead in 9 to 5. I've had a couple of leading roles with that. So when you're that involved in theater, the costuming part comes in to it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we're a couple hours away from the Minnesota Renaissance Festival, which is one of the top 10 Renaissance festivals in the country. I've been going to that since I was a child and always thought the dresses were so beautiful. And as a costumer and a theater person, the costume is what makes the character. So I
Absolutely.
was like, "Oh, I love these dresses, but they're so expensive. So I got to figure out how I can make them." So I'm like,
Wow.
I'll just figure out how to sew." So I learned how to sew and doing some historical patterning. And of course, I can't just sew, then I have to do the research and I have to learn, okay, what was an appropriate fabric to use? What sort of stitches would they use? And of course, I cheat and use my sewing machine for most things, but some things have to be done hand sewn the way they would have been done. So I've made a couple of full Renaissance Tudor garb for my family. And my son, of course, wanted to be a knight. So I
Oh,
had to make him plate armor. And then I also learned how to make chainmail because you
oh,
can't have a knight if you
wow.
don't have chainmail.
Are you really a knight without chainmail?
Ah, and you're not a very well protected knight if you don't have
Oh,
chainmail.
oh, you're a day,
So,
not a night.
oh, yeah. I have the nasty habit of saying, "How hard could it be?" and just jumping head forward into something. So I was at the Renaissance Festival. I saw knights walking around wearing these beautiful full suits of chainmail. I said, "Well, how hard could that be?" And I looked at my husband. I said, "I'm going to learn how to make chainmail." And he's been with me long enough just to roll his eyes and say, "Of course you are."
Okay.
Go for it. And so I learned how to make chainmail. And so this took about 8 hours just to get this little
Oh,
4x4
wow.
sheet. So it is very time consuming, but as you can see, it's very flexible. It just drapes like fabric. And then that's I made
But
him a really cool like arm guards and a skirting of his armor. Because I wasn't ready to make a whole shirt. That would have taken months.
this was gonna ask, what is your time frame? Like, when you see, of course, the first time you see it, you're like, "How hard can it be?" So, are you giving
Hmm.
yourself like, "Ah, I should be able to get that done in 2 months." And then, or, like, how do you give yourself that time frame as to how to
Well,
get it done?
again, theater, you're used to working on short deadlines.
Uh-huh.
I was used to doing stuff really fast. With my kids' Halloween costumes, because we go all out, because theater
Yeah.
mom, props, costume. I have them lock in their decision of what they want to be in August, and I take from August to October to finish them.
Oh, wow.
And this year, my son likes the game Fallout, so he wanted a set of T60 power armor. And so I'm like, oh, okay, how are we going to do that? And so bought some, apparently, there's some amazing cosplayers that make patterns for these armor. And so I bought some patterns and we 3D printed his helmet, and that ended up taking a couple weeks to get all the pieces and then glue them together and then
Mhm.
wire up the lights. And yeah. And of course, all of his friends are jealous of his.
I love it. Now here's the thing too, like you said that you're in theater and you have been able to do some of the costume. But tell us about the theater. It's not like you're like the average theater person that just okay, I threw and splashed some paint on it and it was great. Like you were truly in it and you won some awards.
Yes. So Broadway World, South Dakota. So that is a website, Broadway organization that kind of looks at local community theaters. And they have an award every year for community theater productions because we are off Broadway. So, all community theaters in the state here of South Dakota. And I've won Best Set for two sets that I've done now. I got it for Murder on the Orient Express and then oh, it was a fabulous set because I had the train cars. It was like the front of the train car, and then they would pull apart, and then they would turn around, and you saw the inside of the train cars. And
Yeah.
then when we were at the dining car, they'd pull to the sides, and then you'd see the side of the train cars. It looked like it was the train going around the corner, and it
Oh,
was chef's kiss. It turned out
love it.
exactly how I had envisioned it in my head.
Uh,
That was my first award with Broadway World. My second one was this past year with my set for Matilda. So my whole family was in Matilda. My husband played Rodolfo, who's the dance instructor. My son played Matilda's brother, Michael. And my daughter was one of Matilda's classmates. So, yeah.
I saw that, and that's what brought me to you. It was like, "Whoa, wait a minute." And when I saw all the parts of the design, I was blown away. Now, not blown away to say, but to say, "Okay, we have a physician who is, like, so talented." So, it's one thing that, all out training in medicine, and then to have be able to get all the details. Like, I cannot really explain over the air, like, how beautiful this set was. And the 3D part, like, I love h like you said, when you move it in one direction, you're seeing something else. You move it in another direction, you're seeing another part
Mhm.
of the scene, and then when you put it together, you get, like, a third component. So it really was just, like, really well done. And I'm just like, wow, how intricate the details. And that's the thing. As I said, it's not like throwing splashing paint on the backdrop and oh, look at great. There's like a lot of detail that goes into that. And that's one of the ways I'm like, I need to talk to this lady. I need to talk to her. I need her on the show to really let us know how you got into this. Now, in addition to all of this, you are also an aerial arts specialist. Now,
Yes.
was it because of the Ringling Brothers?
Oh, that was definitely a big part of it. So, yes, I've always thought that would be, yeah, wanted to run away and join the circus after spending so much time with these circus people. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And I found out from one of my EMT friends, she's, hey, I'm going to aerial arts and aerial silks. This is really cool. I think you'd like it. I was like, oh, sign me up. This would be
Yes.
great. So I've been doing aerial silks for about the last 5 years now, and actually did my first competition last year. It was funny. They had I'm watching all these kids, so from 6 through 18, and then they had the adults, and it was basically eight. I was like, they didn't have any adult sign up, so they made 16 through plus the adult that club. Here I am at 46 competing with 18-year-olds. And I lean over to the lady. I'm like, I'm over 20 years older than all of these young ladies, and I
Yes.
can't do the splits like they can. I'm like, I'm just going to embarrass myself. But you know what? I want to show it for all the moms that are sitting in the audience saying, "Gal, I'm so proud of my daughter. I wish I could do that." I want to say, you know, you can. There's nothing that
Yes,
says you can't do that. Don't just watch your kids having fun. Do fun things with them. You know,
absolutely.
get on the silks, try it, be silly. And so I did there. And when the award ceremony came up, they decided that there was a special category for,
40 plus, they gave it a number.
yeah. So they gave me the award as the one and only entry that was 40 plus.
Oh, I love it. But I love like
Yeah.
the like what you're pulling from this is don't just watch the kids go out there and have fun. Go out there and have fun with them. This is
Mhm.
something that we can do together. And you're right. I remember the last time I tried anything aerial. Yeah, I don't think I made it that far off the ground. But that's the beginning, right? I made it maybe ankle length off the ground for the aerial portion. But that's the beginning. And you're right. It was fun. A lot of laughter, a lot of, within it as you try and become better and better at it. So I can imagine. And I love the fact that they were like, you know what, let's make a special category.
Yeah.
But it's even funnier that they numbered it. Like there's a 40 plus category. Let's encourage others to come on in,
Mhm.
right? So this
Exactly.
year you won't be the only mom that's out
Yeah.
there.
Better not be.
Alrighty. So now you're doing all these things, and a lot of people will look and they'll probably look at your life, Dr. Cruz, and just, oh my gosh, Dr. Cruz got it going on. Like she's a pilot. She learned how to do all this training. She was working not too far from the circus with all of the attendees, and she could take care of tiger bites and freak charmers, and oh my gosh, her life. She can do all these sewing and she makes all these costumes and she's winning awards for community theater, best costume and set design. She has it going on. Her life must be awesome. She does experience burnout. What would you say to that person? Yeah, I love the laughter.
Oh, that's funny. I would say, which time do you want to hear about? So, yeah,
Um,
no, I've definitely had burnout. I've definitely had times where I was beyond exhausted. Really, the first time that I hit burnout, and probably the worst, because now I'm able to recognize it and course correct quicker, was actually right after my second child, my daughter, was born. So I was in this rural community, Q4 call, and up with a newborn. And so if the baby wasn't getting me up, the ER was getting me up. I didn't get a full night of sleep for probably 3 years straight. Between my firstborn son, he didn't sleep through the night till he was 2. And then his sister is 2 years older than him. So I just went into another
it's great.
full year of straight of not sleeping. Yeah, I just got to my physical, emotional, mental end of the rope. And I couldn't do it anymore. I was trying to be everything to everyone. The nurses really came to know me and trust me. So they would wait until the other doctor was on his day off. And then they would ask me all the questions they had saved up about his patients. So I would take care of them because
Oh,
they knew I would answer them and treat them with respect and not brush off their concerns. So
wow.
I ended up taking double work. So I wasn't just dealing with my patients, I was dealing with the entire hospital, and I felt like I was running this place by myself,
Mhm.
and it was just exhausting. And when I had my first child, they said, "We realize there is FMLA, and we realize it's legal for you to take 12 weeks off, but we can't afford to have you gone." So in order to be nice, I only took 4 weeks maternity leave with my first child.
Where
And
did you have a C-section or
nope,
okay.
nope.
Mm.
So, regular vaginal delivery, and was back 4 weeks later trying to breastfeed and keep up with pumping, with still seeing all the
Patient.
patients and doing the
Yeah.
ER and taking care of everyone, and stopped taking care of myself. And finally, after watching this through both kids, my husband finally sat me down and he said, "I am sick of watching you kill yourself slowly. Either get a
Ooh.
new job or get a new husband, and I don't care which at this point." And I was just like, "What? I didn't think
Ooh,
it's not that
what?
bad. What are you saying? Fine."
Come on out.
Are you?" I was like, "You're right." I ended up working with a, physician coach,
Mhm.
and we took a long, hard look at my practice and my family and my life. And it was a great practice to start straight out of training. I learned so much. I learned how to do everything independently. But at
Absolutely.
this time in my life, I went there sing with no children. And then in the course of the
Yes.
5 years I was there, I had 2 kids. And we realized that this was not the right environment for me. And it
Mm,
was a lot of guilt for me to look for another job, because I was like, oh, I thought we were gonna live here forever. We bought
mm,
the doc that retires house. We have this beautiful home. We have everyone knows me. I feel like I would
mhm.
be letting this town down. I would be leaving them short a doctor. I did training in rural medicine. I should be able to hack this. What's wrong with me that I can't
Yes.
do it? The other doc's been here for 20 years, and the one that I replaced was here for, they had no problems. They also had a stay-at-home wife. Now,
Exactly.
there was a lot of different expectations, and it
Mhm,
finally came to me to realize that I wasn't the problem. I wasn't broken. I wasn't wrong. This just
mhm.
wasn't the right environment for me anymore. So we came to our current town that we're living in and started with another clinic where now I had 15 colleagues instead of one. The call got much better. I was like, once every 2 weeks? This is amazing. How did I get so lucky? But still doing traditional family medicine with seeing the patients inpatient, outpatient. We would round at the hospital, go to the clinic afterwards. And then about 6 years ago, they went to just a hospitalist program. So we stopped seeing patients inpatient. We were still covered night call for the hospital team. And then when COVID hit, they were asking for people to help with hospital shifts just because they were short staffed and
Right.
concerned. And they had a couple docs who left. And I found that I really liked the shift mentality where you go in, you do your work, you go home, you hand off anything
Mhm.
undone to someone else, and there's nothing waiting for you when you come back. And I really like the diagnostic part of medicine, like figuring out what's wrong with someone and then treating them and then seeing those results that they
Mm.
get better.
Yes.
So this was very, all of a sudden, I'm like, this is great. And then, like I said, about three hospitalists quit all at the same time. And the hospital came to me and said, would you please, you've been doing these weekends for us. I was doing about one weekend a month for the
Mhm.
past year. And they said, you've been doing all these weekends. The nurses like you. We think you're doing great work. Would you consider jumping into this role full time? And I was like, okay, what's the catch? It's 10 shifts a month. And then they told me what the salary was. I'm like, oh, I'm working fewer days a month and I'm getting a pay raise. And it's a
Mhm.
job I like that I've done for the last year on a part-time basis. What's not to love? So I jumped at that opportunity and then still told the clinic, hey, you still need someone to be doing these flight physicals. So I was doing flight physicals about 2 days a month and in one of those off days where I wasn't a hospitalist and watched that and worked with that. And then just came with this opportunity to do my own clinic. And I was like, I see what the clinic's paying me. I see what they're charging the pilots that are coming in. I
Right.
have a building that we bought years ago that's storing our camper and our friends, all of our friends' toys, but it's zone commercial. What's to say I couldn't finish out a
Just
corner of this building and make
right.
my own clinic? I'm like,
Right.
I think this is crazy, but I think we could do it. And I listened to a couple of the leverage and growth summits and talked to
Mhm.
people there. And I'm like, oh, it's not crazy for a doctor to go out on their own. It's not crazy for a
No.
doctor to try to be an entrepreneur. I can
Absolutely.
do this and telling myself I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm like, but I can figure it out.
Yes,
And so
because you've done
that's
hard things before.
yeah. Again, how hard could it be?
Show me
Oh,
that chain thing again. Let's see the chain thing from
oh
the
yeah, it was the chain. How hard could this be? It's not
exactly.
hard.
I love it. What I love about that journey is really how the burnout is one, as you said, you've been able to recognize it earlier now,
Mhm.
but also the phases that it went through where we've recognized that a phase in our lives that we start might not like in our minds, especially I feel for us in medicine, like after we finish training and then we get our job, our mind's like, now you're gonna stay put. And
Mhm.
that's it. Great job. Kudos to you. You did all of this learning, all of this training. Now you have the job and this is where you are. But in reality, that's not how life is because where we start, the circumstances around it changes so much. And for a lot of us, like when we start our first jobs, we're not with kids. And everyone who's become a parent recognizes how different life is once you become a parent and all the things that you'd be able to manage, and no, that's not a big deal. I can just when you become a parent, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So you're trying to fix your life around these very rigid parameters that you have because of you're a parent. And after a while, it just doesn't work. but you still try, right? It doesn't like for most of us, it's not like we say, okay, I notice this is not working now. We do 3 more years of trying to make it work. And then you have to come to that moment where, which is what your husband. I think a lot of our significant others look at us and they're like, okay, enough's enough. But we're like, no, but we could still make it work. All I have to do, I can sleep 2 hours on Thursdays and we'll be good. And it's no, let's get this working. So you've made that decision and you transition to where you are. And a lot of times we're afraid to make that transition because our mind tells us it's going to be worse. I don't know. You should have just stayed where you are and deal with it because wherever you're going, what if it's worse than where you left? But then a lot of times we forget to ask, what if it's better? And
Exactly.
then, yeah, what if it's better? And so now you're in the position where you've also transitioned that and then transitioned to the, whoa, there's a whole new world out there for physicians. Like we're not just stuck in doing medicine just the standard way. You can actually build this life in and a practice. And the practice can be towards what it is that you're passionate about. I love it. So I love that excitement of where you're headed and this wonderful flight time medical once it's finishes and you're no longer in the camper or in the office and getting it done. So thank you for telling us and taking us on that journey of how you're able to use all your passion and pull yourself and also the support, the family support and getting out of burnout and recognizing it and seeing like this new passion that is going to be able to unfold for you to help others with all these skill sets. Now, there's so many things, and I have my fun question of the day that I'm going to ask you to really work on it because there's so many things that you've done. So, my question is if you weren't a doctor,
Mhm.
a pilot, doing costumes and set design, aerial art, you weren't doing that, you weren't dealing with I was gonna say lions and tigers and bears, but it was just tiger. It's snakes and weren't a contortionist and, weren't an English teacher because mom was an English teacher.
Mhm.
Mm. Is there anything else that I'm missing? Okay, what would you be?
Oh, geez. I think one thing I didn't tell you is during medical school, I was supposed to do a rotation with NASA with their flight doctors. And I went through, oh my gosh, it took 6 months to jump through all the hoops and all the forms and all the background checks. And they finally gave me my dates when I could go.
Mhm.
And it would have been during a shuttle launch, which would have been amazing. And it overlapped with graduation requirements for medical school by 2 days.
Mhm.
So I said to NASA, hey, could you move this and let me finish 2 days early? They're like, no, those are your dates. Take it or leave it. I was like, Moline University, could I miss the first 2 days about learning how to play back my promissory notes and all these lectures that we're sitting through? And they're like, you do that, you don't graduate. So I was like,
Oh, no, you're
oh, so
close.
so I had to give up my rotation at NASA. But the summer with my family, we went to a family space camp down in Huntsville, Alabama. So I at least got a taste of my astronaut aspirations. So I would totally want to be an astronaut.
Oh, man, you made it this close.
It was so close.
Alrighty, so the next round, I will not be surprised if I'm seeing in that picture
Oh,
Dr. Jill Cruz, who was going up in space as one of our flight physician astronauts. All right, I'm looking forward to that and being able to say, I know. Oh my
I would
gosh. All right.
totally.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's happening because I said it. All
Yeah.
right. Already with that, there's so many people who want to get to know you and want to be part of your world. Plus, there's some people that know about the flight time medical, but then there are others who are like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. And you know what? I am this close to my requirements and I needed to get a physical. And now I know somebody who can. So, can you tell these people how can they get in contact with you? And how can those pilots who are like, can you sign me up so I can get my physical so that I can fly? How they can get in contact with you also?
Yep. The best way to get a hold of me is on our website, flight-time-medical.com. And that gives the links, all the information. I'm like 2 miles from the airport. I've even told pilots, you fly in, I'll come pick you up. We'll get this physical taken care of and get you on your way. So I've been doing that. And then Prairie Doc is my other TV show with South Dakota Public Television. And that is through the Healing Words Foundation. where you look that. So again, just if you Google Prairie Doc, I think it's prairiedoc.org is the website that has all of the television stuff with that, where I do a TV show that's live on South Dakota Public TV. I'm one of 4 hosts. We're in our 23rd season
Oh,
of the
wow.
show. Yeah. So that's been a great way where we have this live call-in show, and any patients that have questions about health things, we're bringing experts and have a specific topic usually for that show. Or our favorite, which is Ask Anything, where we'll bring in family docs and you can ask any medical
Anything.
question you want. And then before the show, we have pre-med students that shadow with us and answer the phone calls. And now it's more questions on Facebook where they'll send us a message. But it used to be a call bank where they'd pick up a literal phone and write down a message and then they'd slip you a sheet. Now
Yeah.
it all goes through the iPad where they're sending us that information and we answer viewers' questions live on air.
Oh, that is awesome. So there are 2 ways to get in
2
contact
ways.
with
Mhm.
Dr. Jill Kruse. So if you would like to be one of those participants, would really love to get my question answered. You go to, what was it? The
prairiedoc.org. Yep.
prairiedoc.org, and you'd be able to type in your question. Like I said, it's probably through Facebook at this
Yep.
point.
Yep.
And
It's,
if
it's
yeah,
live on Facebook and YouTube. So,
and
yep,
YouTube.
we stream the shows, or if you get South Dakota Public Television, you can watch us.
Love it. And then if you are now the thing that you mentioned, but you mentioned it so quickly, then I'm like, wow, wait a minute. So really, if you are a pilot and you fly into South Dakota and you needed to get your physical really quickly, they can get in contact with you. And you said it's flight dash
Flight dash time dash yep
medical.com.
account.
And you said that once they go in, they can be able to contact you. And if it's a quick turnaround
Yeah.
and you have the availability, you'll be able to even come and get them because you're only 2 miles away from the airport so that they can get
Right.
these things done. Wow. So that's a great service to know for all my pilots. I actually have one of our family friends. He's a pilot also. So I'm like, oh, I need to let
Yep.
Peter know
Here.
about this. Oh, there we
Good. There
go.
you go.
Oh, flight time. Every pilot needs flight time. Yes. Love it. Flight time medical.
Mhm.
Alrighty, everyone. Dr. Jill, this was so good. I had a great time with you. And I know here's what's happening. It always happens. People are jumping on and they're like, oh my gosh, I got on, but I heard the last part. And I'm like, have no fear. This wonderful conversation is available on our Your Caring Docs website. That goes to URCARINGDOCS doc. Select podcasts. You'll see Dr. Jill's beautiful face. Download that episode and share it with at least 5 or 10 people who you know. Now, if there's a pilot that you know and you're like, oh, my friend is a pilot, definitely share it with that friend. So, for those of you guys, definitely share this episode. Now, we do have in addition, are Your Caring Docs. I'm also CEO of Truly Balanced Wellness Care, where we help and support those who are looking for ways to lose unwanted weight, especially if they want to do that through the GLPs. So if you do want some support that way, you can go to Truly Balanced with a D, WC.com. And we have some upcoming great news coming up with Truly Balanced wellness care. So look forward to that. But with that, do you have any last words for us, Dr. Cruz, for those who are multi passionate, but they're afraid to go ahead and explore their passion? What would you say to that person?
I would say in life, you're either a pilot or a passenger. Which one do you want to be?
Ooh, that's good. You are either a pilot or a passenger of your life. Which one do you want to be? Do you want to be active or passive? Do you want to be able to see it from the other viewpoint? Like you said, once that plane, the tire lifted off, it was just like a whole new world. So for those of you guys who've taken the time to be part of the show, to listen in, I really truly thank you. For those who have taken the time to jump on online, I truly thank you and I appreciate you being so generous and giving me just a small part of your day. So with that, we're going to end today's show. Thank you so much, Dr. Jill Cruz. Thank you all that are watching and who are listening. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford with Dr. Tamara Beckford Show. I will catch you guys next time. All right. Bye bye.